welcome to everyone this morning to our webinar on the Canal du Midi. This is a program that we're going to be running next year in October of 2020, and I'm very excited about it. So without further ado, I'm just going to slide things around here, and and we're going to get started. So I'll let Cassandra. You can. Perfect. Oh, let's go. First of all, what Wheel and Anchor is all about. Again, for those of you who are new to our programs, I'll just briefly mention that the idea behind Wheel and Anchor is that we are a travel community, and we are bringing like-minded travelers, people who are interested in exploring the world, not necessarily in the usual fashion of mass travel and so on, but rather in exploring in different ways that allow us to share the experience with other people. So that's really what we're about at Wheel and Anchor, is bringing travelers together. That's my mission. And for each of you as travelers specifically, my goal is to have you be well traveled. So to see as many places and experience as many things, meet as many people, taste as much food as you possibly can. That's my goal. That's self-expression mission in life. But at the same time, to be well connected, meaning meeting other people like you. The more that we have people who are worldly, who have shared experiences all the world, we get to, you get to compare notes and foster a broader understanding of what the world is all about, what the people are all about. I think that, I think we would all agree that a greater understanding of the world and being connected to great people from here in Canada, but beyond that, just would, leads to it being a better place. So who is on today? Of course, Cassandra, sticking her head in there, and who is our Senior Member Services Specialist. Myself, Gordon Dreger. I'm the founder of Wheel and Anchor, and my right-hand man, our co-founder and doing technical support, as always, Joel Curry, is going to be silently in the background today. The plan for today, it's about you. It's always about you, our members who are interested about this idea of Canal du Midi. You might not even be sure what it is. Perhaps you've Googled it. Somebody's mentioned to you they've been on a barge program. You wonder what it's all about. I'm here to be your guide, often in person, of course, on our trips, but today on a webinar to show you a little bit about what this region of France and this very special canal is all about. Canal du Midi is what we're going to be investigating, and it's our destination in the end of October of 2020. And I say incidentally that we plan the timing of this so that it follows on to our Tastes of Eastern France program. So if anyone is interested in to do a bit of the Taste of Eastern Champagne component, you could do that immediately before, or the Lyon gastronomic adventure that we're planning, or even the river cruise as well. So you could spend a whole month with us in France. We're going to have a great time. Or you can come just for the Canal du Midi program. It's a lovely time of the year to travel. So let's look now at the map of where we're going to go. So you see on the key inset map here where we're talking about. We're talking about the south central part of France, not far from the Spanish border. Our beginning point is Toulouse, which I'll talk about in a second. We go by train into Carcassonne, which I will talk about as well, then get on our boat, travel for the week along the canal to Agde, and then end up in Montpellier. The canal itself goes all the way from the Atlantic to the Mediterranean. It's 240 kilometers long. We're going to do a little over half that. This segment that we're going to do is about 130 kilometers in duration, and we're going to pass through 33 locks. There's 91 in total. That's what makes this canal so interesting. Imagine going through 91 locks. I think 33 is enough. And this is the best part of the Canal du Midi that we're going to be cruising along. So we depart Canada on October the 19th. If you are coming from Canada, if you're joining us from Europe, either from our Taste of Eastern France program or elsewhere, we'll meet up on October the 20th in Toulouse. And depending on where you're coming from, there's a number of different ways to get there, invariably flying via Paris, but also from Western Canada, we fly sometimes via Amsterdam. So there's some different flight routes that are possible there. But as always, I like to make sure that you have the best and most efficient route for you. I'm not funneling everybody through Toronto. So if you're in Toronto, great, we fly to Paris and then on. Otherwise, we'll take whatever route that suits, and we'll arrive in Toulouse. And so you've probably heard of Toulouse, but you might not know what it's about. It's most famous because it's really the center of European aeronautics, right? The European Space Agency is based there, and of course, Airbus. So it's always fun when you fly into the airport in Toulouse, you see the big Airbus factory, and you see planes from all over the world because, of course, that's where they get made and painted, and they fly off from there. But Toulouse actually is one of the prettiest cities in France. And I must say, I only recently visited in July, partly to put together this tour, and I was really taken aback. They call it the Pink City because the buildings are all done up in pink granite. But there's the parks, the laneways. It just seems such a clean and yet historic city with, the cafes, like kind of what you imagine a French city to be, but without the griminess of Paris. And don't get me wrong, I like Paris, but Toulouse to me is just really, really something special. And so I found it a very pleasant surprise to spend some time in Toulouse. So we'll arrive, we'll have the rest of the afternoon at leisure as usual, just to sort of catch up and meander around. We're staying right in the center, not far from the railway station, so you can easily get around town. And then in the next day, we'll have a good half-day tour of the city, where we're going to see some of the amazing buildings, like the City Hall in particular is a very, very dramatic building in the center of town, and it has all kinds of streets and alleys that link off of it. A jillion amazing cafes. And here's the thing I found about Toulouse, actually, and I am not a shopper, but the shopping was particularly good. So if I was doing this trip, I would probably go and leave most of my stuff at home and I go shopping in Toulouse, because I just found they had a great diversity of interesting little shops at relatively reasonable prices. I was quite surprised. So that's Toulouse. So we're going to spend a full day there, half-day guided tour, and then the rest of the time to just wander about. And it's just a great city for wandering around. The next day, then we will head to Carcassonne. So we'll have breakfast at our hotel, and then we'll make our way down by train. It's only about a 40-minute train ride to the famous ancient city of Carcassonne. And Carcassonne is, again, this was part of my trip here in early July, truly an amazing medieval city. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It actually dates back to the time of Christ. So the original bits of it are something like 2,000 years old. And it's amazing. It's the oldest continuously inhabited ancient fortress or ancient city in all of Europe. An amazing place. So we'll pull into Carcassonne probably in the late morning. We're going to take it easy today. We'll drop our stuff off at the boat, which is like literally a 5-minute walk from the railway station. And then we'll make our way up for the afternoon and wander around. We'll have a guided tour of Carcassonne, seeing the main church that's inside the old city, which dates back to the 1200s, and as well as touring around and just wandering through all of the neat little shops. It's touristy, but I was there in the peak of the summer season and I found it not that crazy. I was actually quite impressed that it wasn't as busy as Dubrovnik, for example, which is, it's a similar city in layout, but much busier. So as I say, we'll spend the afternoon touring around. We'll come back then to our boats, because we'll probably have 2 or 3, depending on how many members decide to sign up for this tour. It's not going to be a big group. This is our boat. So these are purpose-built boats. They're quite nice. I toured through a couple of them when I was there, and that's where we're going to be spending our week on the canal. And I was really, as I say, quite impressed with these. They look like they're practically brand new. And they're very comfortable inside. They're modest. So, I mean, we're not talking luxury finishings and all the rest of it. But they have ample seating both inside and out for up to 8 people. Realistically, we'll probably have about 6 per boat. That's what I'm aiming for, because I think that's about the right number, just to have a little bit of extra leg room. They do have 4 double or twin cabins on board, plus a whole crew cabin as well in the forward part of the vessel. There's a kitchen, there's a lounge, which is actually air conditioned. I don't think we'll need air conditioning in the end of October, but you never know. And a lovely deck, which is where you hang out. You can see in the lower picture, a couple of chairs stuck out there to just have a glass of wine and watch the wonderful French countryside go by. All the cabins have their own private, obviously, toilet and shower facilities. Then there's an extra powder room, if you want to call it that, as well off the main lounge. So you've got all private facilities. They really are quite comfortable. There's a kitchen on board as well, which is where breakfast will be served. But breakfast, and I'll tell you a little bit about the flow of each day, is going to be typically a sort of an extended continental breakfast. We're going to wander off to the local boulangerie, the local French bakeries, and grab our own breakfast each morning. I mean, it's included in the program, but you can go and you can pick out those lovely baguettes or those fantastic French pastries, whatever sort of suits your fancy, and that's how we're going to do it. We're going to bring it back. Maybe we'll eat some at the bakery, because I frankly can't leave a French bakery without sampling some of the delectable stuff. So that's kind of the experience on board. I should mention on board as well, have wine, beer, soft drinks available at all times. So you never have to worry about having a glass of wine. And for those of you that know me, I like my wine. So we're going to pick out some great wines that we'll be able to sample as we cruise down the river. So we'll spend our first night on the ship in port in Carcassonne. That'll allow us time to sort of explore around the city, have a lovely dinner in town. The next day, then we'll set off on our first leg, heading down the canal towards Trèbes. And we're going to pass some amazing sites. Every day there's some very interesting things to see, and a lot of them are canal related, like there's all the locks that we'll do. But they have these amazing aqueducts, like for example, the Frequel and Orbe aqueducts, which are the first ones that we'll see. There's a so-called double staircase lock, so 2 locks in a row. There's other places where we'll have 3 locks in a row. And we'll spend a few hours, and we'll arrive in Trèbes probably late morning, early afternoon, depending on what time we set off. And we'll explore this. This is one of the 2 larger towns or small cities that we'll visit as we pass the canal. And it's a delightful old town. We'll have a sightseeing tour. They'll point out some of the highlights. We'll have dinner in town. So that's kind of the daily plan of how our program is going to work. We get up in the morning. For those that are early birds, we'll get up probably around 7. We'll walk over to the boulangerie. So for the next day, for example, when we get up in Trèbes, we'll wander over. There's a whole pile of them in this town. We'll find the best one. We'll grab our baguettes and our pastries and our French breakfast, and we'll bring it back and enjoy it on board. We'll shove off around 8:30 in the morning, 9, depending on how far we have to go. And we'll leisurely cruise down the canal. And then usually by lunch, we'll either make a stop. If it's not at our final destination, it'll be one of the towns along the way. And we sort of go from there. So that brings us to the next day, where we will leave Trèbes in the morning. And this day we have something a little bit special planned. So as wherever possible, we're going to make some different activities. So it's not just about sitting on the boat or not just about sightseeing. This day we're going to stop at a little town called Millepetit, and we're going to do a French cooking class, which I'm very excited about, because we're going to get a real insight into the essentials of French cooking. It's not the Cordon Bleu school, but it's quite a fun experience. So we'll spend a number of hours there, enjoy lunch as well, enjoying all of the fare that we've managed to create. And as well, they have a special introduction to what the art of the aperitif and what an aperitif is for and how it fits in with French food. That's going to be all part of our experience at Millepetit. And then we'll continue on to Puicheric, the so-called, this is the Minervois region, which is sort of a sub-region of Languedoc. Again, you could see what the canal, this is what the canals look like all the way along, tree-lined. Sometimes they have a bicycle path along the way. Sometimes it's through a little town or village. I mean, it doesn't get more idyllic, than that. In Puicheric, there's three waterways that come together. So there's the Canal du Midi itself, the Aude River, which we will sort of run parallel to for much of our trip, as well as the Rigole. So we'll get to see where all of those things come together. And then from the next day, so we'll do our usual overnight. We'll have our dinner in Puicheric, a number of lovely places to choose from, and dinner will be included that night. So we'll have picked the best one, of course, for our group to have dinner. Morning the next day we get up and we have a longer stretch with no locks, about 16 kilometers, and then there's a whole bunch more bridges and aqueducts and all that kind of stuff, and then we hit Minervois itself, or Argens-Minervois, which is, as you can see here, is a very idyllic town. And one of the things it's known for is this bridge, this aqueduct type thing that you see here in the bottom of the picture. There's also a 14th century castle. So many. Each of these towns is similar in many ways, like the construction techniques and so on, but yet has their own charm, and they're lovely to just sort of saunter around in. This is a smaller town. We probably won't have a guided tour here, frankly, because there's not that much guiding to do. But we'll have a lovely time meandering around. It's a nice place to take a bike or take a walk, and enjoy dinner in town and some aperitif on board the boat. The next day, then we head a little bit further down the canal, so a bunch more locks, and I think we have on average 5 to 7 locks every day of the trip. So really there's a lot of activity going on, so it's far from boring. On the way to Capestan, we passed by the Reputre aqueduct, which is actually the oldest one in the world, going back to about almost 500 years old, the oldest of its kind in the world. So this is the type of thing that we'll see along the way, dotting the countryside. It's amazing, the history that you can see just traveling through what seems like the middle of nowhere often. We'll stop at Le Sommeil on the way, which has this massive antique bookstore that is very, very cool stop. And they even have a hat museum. They have a bunch of other things. And then we'll get into Capestang itself, which is a medieval town. And we'll have a little sightseeing tour, and we'll get a bit insight into these are the smaller villages that we visit along the way. We then come to our third last day. So day 8, we're traveling from Capestan out to Béziers. And here's a neat, quirky thing that we'll see along the way is they have the canal has a tunnel, 160-meter long tunnel, which is the oldest canal tunnel in the world. So again, really kind of neat. You have to duck down if you're sitting on the deck because the boat basically just barely fits through. And it's one of the neat sort of experiences that we have along the way. By the way, we travel pretty slowly. So the boat is going around 10, 11 kilometers an hour. So it's like a gentle bike ride. And so one of the things that we'll ask members that wish to come along, if you'd like to have a bike, and then we'll provide a bicycle on board as well for those who wish. So you can just, get your exercise and bike alongside. In fact, you'll probably bike ahead because the boat will be so slow. So that's kind of a neat way to experience the whole canal as well. Béziers, again, one of the larger towns that we'll visit. It's about 100,000 people, and it's I haven't been to Béziers, I must say. I didn't make it there on my last trip in July, but I've heard wonderful things about it, and I think we're gonna have a terrific experience there. So then on the last day of our trip, we pass. So we're now in the part where we're very close to the Mediterranean itself, and as we make our way to Agde, which is sort of the gateway to the Mediterranean from the canal itself, and we pass all of these étangs, which literally translated means ponds. They're these huge lagoons of water where you see oysters being grown and shellfish, mussels, and all the rest of this kind of stuff. It really is quite interesting scenery. And we'll pull into Agde, which will be our final stop. The town has all of this interesting black slate type architecture, so it's quite known for that. You can hop down to the beach. Believe it or not, you can still swim in the Mediterranean at the end of October. It's on the cool side. It really depends on what the weather's like outside, but it's quite a nice time of the year because we'll have for all the wines that are grown in Languedoc. So once we're at Agde, we'll have our last dinner in town and spend our last night aboard ship, aboard the boat, and we'll say goodbye in the morning and have our usual breakfast at the boulangerie before catching the train. It's not a far trip up to Montpellier. And Montpellier is kind of the Languedoc-Roussillon region, Toulouse is the nicer of the two cities, but listen, it's a classic French city. It's known as it's kind of the center of French wine, believe it or not. So, I mean, we think about Bordeaux and we think about Burgundy, but Montpellier is where they have the annual international wine exposition. So they do it here. So all of the top vineyards from around the world come to Montpellier, and they have that event here. So we get to spend a full day in Montpellier, again, a guided tour. The day that we arrive, when we come up from Agde, and then the second day in Montpellier, I'm planning something special. There's either two different things that I'm looking at, which is we're either going to do a French bakery class. So we're going to either spend some time with one of Montpellier's top pastry chefs and learn how to cook, how to prepare croissant, and all of these wonderful, just perfectly made French pastries and breads, or we're going to do a trip into the agricultural area called Pic de Loup, which is just outside of Montpellier, where we're going to visit some different farms, a vineyard, and we're going to get a sense of all of this great food that they produce in France, where it comes from, because this part of Languedoc as well is sort of the breadbasket of certainly southern France. So depending on how many people join us, we may do both programs. So we may have a choice to do either the baking class or the visit to the farm. We'll just sort of see how it shapes up, but that's part of our program in Montpellier, and then that pretty much wraps it up. So we'll head for home, flying out of Montpellier again, either via Paris or possibly by another gateway, depending on how it is that you flew in, or if you want to stay on in France a little bit longer. I mean, you can take a TGV, high-speed train from Montpellier right back to Paris, or you could go to Provence to Nice and the Côte d'Azur. There's many things that you could do if you wanted to stay on a little bit longer. Let me now go through a few of the details about this program, what it's all about. So as I said, it's happening from October the 20th. October the 20th is our start day in France. So if you're flying out of Canada, it's October the 19th to November the 1st. The prices are $45.50 double occupancy and $54.50. So quite modest if you want a cabin to yourself, and all Canadian dollars, as always. So what do you get for all that? Well, that program includes transfers between the airport in Toulouse and the hotel, as well as back in Montpellier. And that's on a private basis, on the basis of two people. So no matter when you arrive, you will be met at the airport, in all likelihood by myself. It just depends on the timing of everybody, but we'll pick you up at the airport in Toulouse. bring you downtown to our hotel, and then back again from Montpellier. We have some lovely 4-star hotels picked out, both in Toulouse and Montpellier, that have a wonderful breakfast that comes with them as well. We've got 7 nights on the boat. As far as the meals are concerned, so we'll do a extended continental breakfast, which again is really that whole experience of going out, just like people in France do, and shopping at the bakery. We'll also have various cereals, meats, cheeses that are available for breakfast. So we're going to kind of make it to suit whatever that you'd like to have in the morning. Lunches or dinners will be included each day. Some days both lunch and dinner. Other days just one of two, but we're going to do that outside because there's so many great little bistros and restaurants to try in these towns that we're going to enjoy our meals. We're going to enjoy our meals there. We're going to have guided sightseeing, of course, in English at various towns along the way. And as I said, unlimited wine, beer, and soft drinks. So you don't have to worry about that stuff either. And of course, as usual, all of the other taxes and tips and so on, all taken care of by your Wheel and Anchor host. So the only thing that isn't included is, of course, your trip insurance, which we always have to mention, and I highly recommend. Any other meals that are not included. And I know the question may come up, what about lunch, dinner? It's fairly reasonable in France, actually, particularly in this part of France. I would say you could go out for lunch for 20, 25 euros, so 30 to $40 a person for a nice lunch. That would be it. You could probably do it even less expensive in some of these towns if you were just looking for a lighter meal. And dinner, maybe, 30 euros will get you a nice 3-course menu du jour or something like that. So it's really not too expensive. And wine, of course, is much less expensive than in Canada. So that's always refreshing. And for some people, depending on where you're flying from, you may need to lay over in an airport on the way back, either in Paris or Amsterdam, just because of the way that flights connect. There's not so many flights out of Montpellier, so that may be a requirement, and that would be extra if that's required. But we'll help you out with that for sure. Airfare, of course, as we're doing now for all of our programs, airfare is separate. We're happy to set that up. Cassandra was happy to set that up for you. This just gives you an idea of what you're looking at based on fares that we can see now, depending on where you're coming from the east side of Canada, $900 to $1,000. From Toronto, Montreal. If you're coming from Halifax, Calgary, Vancouver, you probably need an extra hop in there. $1,200-$1,300 is what your airfare will allow you. And as I say, you can come on any routing that you wish, because we will pick you up no matter when you arrive, and we will make sure that you are brought back to the airport for your check-in in Montpellier. So that basically is it. Of course, as always, if you have any questions about this program, and I'm about to answer the questions that have come in so far, you can always email me. I love to hear from our members to answer questions. Of course, Cassandra is there as well. So let me just now click open our questions and say, so Arnold asked, can I try driving one of the boats? Yes, absolutely. So here's the interesting thing about these boats is that they are license free. So you don't require a special boating license, which you do in a lot of parts of Europe, in order to be able to drive it. Of course, that we'll have the host and or a captain locally that will provide that service for us. So you don't have to worry. You don't have to drive the boat, but if you'd like to, give it a whirl, by all means, it's kind of fun. It's going so slow, like really nothing can happen. Not much anyway. Did I say unlimited wine? Asks Tracy. Yes, we're going to provide wine on board. I always like to say reasonable quantities. So, but yeah, no, we're going to have wine, red, white, maybe some rosé that we will get from the region. Languedoc, as you know, is the biggest wine producing region in France. It's bigger than Bordeaux, it's bigger than Burgundy, and they have some fantastic wine. And I want you to try as much of it as you can. So that's going to be in the program. James asked can you swim in the canal? you can. I wouldn't do it. The water is relatively clean. So the whole canal is actually spring fed. So they have to feed the canal with water because it is the way the canal goes between the Atlantic and the Mediterranean, and the high point is in the middle. So they actually have to use water from the surrounding mountains to feed the canal. So the water is clean, but I don't know if I'd swim in it. I kind of leave that up to you, just because, although it's spring fed, it just doesn't look so appealing. Then what is the weather like at this time of the year? Well, that's a good question. So October is typically still quite a nice month, and I've picked the end of October because we're just at the sort of the end of the high season, which typically goes till about the middle of October, when they have all of the harvesting of the wine grapes and other fruits and vegetables that grow in this region. So we can expect temperatures that will certainly be in the high teens, maybe even in the low 20s at that time of the year. So it's quite sort of on the warmish side of fall weather. We may get the occasional day of rain. That's possible. It's usually the rainy period starts more into November. But yeah, it should be quite nice weather, and it's cool in the evening. So that's a nice thing. So you will need a light sweater for sure to be able to sit out on the deck in the evening. But I think it's a fabulous time. And my experience in France in October has been that the weather is usually quite lovely. Good. So I think that looks like all the questions. Joel, were there any other questions that came in? No, I think that's it. This is a great program. This is very unique, and it's a different way to experience the Canal du Midi. So you may have heard of other people that have gone. They have other trips down the canals using these super luxury barges, which are very nice. But for me, what makes this program special is because we are in our own vessel, on our own schedule, more or less on our own schedule. We've obviously thought all this and planned it all through, but the going out to eat with the locals in these restaurants along the way is what makes it super, super special and different, and frankly, a lot of fun. So it's a perfect. One more question has just come in. Sorry, let me just pull it up. Is this the same trip that you will offer in 2021? Yes, I foresee that we will do this again. Probably at least once or twice a year, we'll run this program, likely in the spring and in the fall. So we haven't made any plans yet for 2021. We're just in the process of thinking about that. But it is, we will run it again. As I say, likely spring and fall. I stay away from summer because it's just frankly too busy on the canal. And the weather is just perfect in April and in October. So that's when we're going to go. So if you do have any other questions, anything comes up, if you're interested in this program, the brochure is just about finished. So it's going to be sent out to all of you and all of the other people who are interested in this idea. Look through it, bring us your questions, and we will, I'll be happy to talk about it. So thank you again for your patience, for participating in our webinar this morning. A copy will be sent out to you once we do some edits to it. And I look forward to meeting a whole bunch of you next week. Those of you in Toronto at our 2 events, which are actually sold out in the meantime. And everyone else, I will be coming to a town near you in the not too distant future. So have a wonderful day, and thank you again.